My husband, 38, won't accept our gay son. Last month my son, 16, came out to us as gay. I, 36, already kind of had a feeling. Call it mother's intuition if you will, and was not at all surprised when my son came out. My husband and I both grew up in religious households, but when we had children, we never wanted to force anything onto them. We both agreed that we would raise them as best as we could, and if they chose not to believe in God, we would love them just as much as if they did. We married young and our eldest was born when I was 20. We had always wanted a decently big family and are so grateful for our 3 beautiful boys and baby girl. However, last month, the dynamics of our perfect family broke apart. My son had been so nervous for a while before he told us, and then when restaurants reopened, he begged us to take him out alone. Without his siblings he looked desperate, so we both agreed, and my mother babysat for us. We arrived and I just had a feeling I knew what he was going to say, and when the food arrived, he finally said it. "Mum, Dad, I'm gay." I held his hand and told him that I loved him. We both did, and he will always be our son. From hindsight, I now realize my husband was being unusually quiet, but at the time I was so elated, and my son looked so relieved. When we got back home that evening, my husband went straight upstairs. I assumed he went to the bathroom, but when he came down, he had a suitcase. He grabbed my son and dragged him along with suitcase out of the house. I ran after them. Of course my husband called him names and pushed him onto his drive. He basically threw my son out. I was pissed. I had no reason to believe my husband would react this way. We have friends who are openly gay and talk to many people at our church who are too. I don't understand how his son being openly gay is a problem for him. I was so pissed. I stood between them and told my husband to respect his son for who he is now. He's never been a violent man, but for the first time in the 17 years we've been married, I saw him as violent. He hit my son. I was so angry. I threatened to call the police if he didn't leave right now. He left the house angrily, drove away. He has been staying with his brother since. I love my husband and my son. I want them both to be happy, but my son is 16. He can't live without his parents' help. My husband can. I chose my son over my husband. Does that make me a bad person? Probably, but the moment he hit my son, he lost all my respect. I don't think I could ever look at him the same way he hit our son. That's not okay. I'll always love my son, no matter what he chooses to do with his life. Why can't my husband just accept him for who he is? If he's okay with these strangers being openly gay, why can't his son? Now my son blames himself for me being upset with his father. I keep telling him it's not his fault, but it doesn't help that whenever their father does come home, he poisons our other children's minds to think it is their older brother's fault. I just want my family to be peaceful again, but my husband is refusing to talk to me for as long as I defend my son. Last week, he suggested a divorce. I love my husband so much, but if he doesn't accept my son and apologize for hurting him, I don't think I could stay married to him. Every time I see him, I'm just reminded of that moment when his fist hit my son's face, and it makes me so angry and upset. My mother has suggested we go to couples therapy, but I see no point. If his father is too stubborn to accept his son for who he is it even worth it to stay married if all I remember is him harming my son? Clarifications and kind of an update. I didn't want to express the language my husband used against my son as it was very insensitive and offensive. I didn't think it would be appropriate to write them out. Me and my children are staying with my parents at the moment. Husband keeps showing up at the house and son experiences major panic attacks when he does. When I commented I would suggest therapy, I meant for him to go alone so he could work out his issues. I'm looking into some family therapists, LGBT friendly therapists, etc. It is quite difficult to find some in these trying times, but I have found a couple who seem good. Also, I think the one thing most people were concerned about was to charge my husband for assault. I did take pictures of the injuries and was ready to go to the police, but my son begged me not to. This whole thing has clearly shaken him up, and he's scared his dad will hate him even more. Even my parents have been trying to stop me from making such a spectacle of it, but I do agree some action should be taken. I'm just trying to remind my son that his father should be penalized for hitting him, and that it's not okay, ever, for someone to hit their children. It's currently 9:30 am where I live, and my husband has responded by telling me that he refuses to meet with me and that I should contact him via a lawyer now. Yes, I'm heartbroken that my husband wants to divorce me because those feelings have been there for 17 plus years. It's hard for them to just go overnight, but I do think divorce is the best option for us. He put up a facade. Our whole marriage, he kind of broke my trust. I don't know if I could ever allow him back in the home. It would be at the risk of harming me and my children, and he could be lying to me again. I would hate it if one day I woke up to my son not speaking to me because I chose his abusive father over him. I don't think it's worth it. He doesn't want to be mature and at least have a conversation with me about it. He's really changed from the man I knew him to be, and I honestly don't know how to deal with that. It's very difficult to know the man you've devoted so much of your life to has been pretending to be someone he's not. I have been in contact with a couple of divorce lawyers from my area. My cousin is a solicitor and even thought divorce isn't her specialty. She was able to find me some of the best from my area. Also, my plan for today is to sit all my children down and have a long talk about why mum and dad are divorcing and that none of them are to blame. Especially my eldest. I'll tell them that their father did something intolerable by hitting their older brother and expressing such aggressive behavior in front of them. I'm also going to ask them what their father has been saying to them and recording it. I'm just really lucky I have a decent job and make a stable income during this pandemic. Otherwise I would be screwed right now. Even though husband was the breadwinner, I don't make too far off from what he does. If he's okay with these strangers being openly gay, why can't his son? He's not okay with them being gay, but it doesn't affect his life and he can ignore it when it's not that close to him. He can ignore them being gay as it is obviously due to their upbringing and their parents making poor choices. His son being gay however reflects badly on him because gasp, what will people think of him as the parent of a gay child? I chose my son over my husband. Does that make me a bad person? You choosing your abusive husband over your son would make you a bad person. Your son only has you. I keep telling him it's not his fault, but it doesn't help that whenever their father does come home, he poisons our other children's minds to think it is their older brother's fault. Family counseling without your husband now and start the separation process. You can't continue living with your husband under the same roof this way. I chose my son over my husband. Does that make me a bad person? No, quite the opposite really. You protected your son from your violent husband. That makes you a great person and an amazing mother. Find a good lawyer and a good therapist for you and your kids as a family and your son as an individual. It is never worth it to stay married to someone who would harm your child for any reason. I had a violent and abusive father. The worst parts were my mom taking his side and blaming me for the things. One of the moments that I remember the most was when my father tried to kill me by choking me. I kicked him and ran away. Stayed 2 weeks at my aunt's house. My mom didn't show up. She just sent me a text saying, "Why you make your father so angry?" I struggle with depression and suicidal thoughts. It took me years of therapy and pills to being able to not think suicide is okay. I'm better now that in therapy I learned that is not my fault. I didn't choose anything that happened to me. So, you are the best mom. Be proud that you were strong enough to stand up to your husband, even scared of him. Your son will see that and love you for it. I'm sorry that happened to you, and I'm glad you're feeling better now. And thank you. You have definitely made me see this in a different light. I wouldn't want my son to think harming himself is okay. As a mother, your first obligation is to your children, second to yourself, and third to your husband. He lost your respect in the moment he chose to harm your son for something he can't control any more than he can control the color of his skin. Because he is no longer worthy of respect. Protect your children. Nothing else matters right now. I would never be able to stay married to someone like that. To be so cruel, especially to your own family. Awful. I audibly gasped at the image in my head of him dragging his kid out of the house with his stuff and hitting him. That is unspeakably cruel. He had damaged that poor kid for life. You did the right thing. Tell that man to never sign near you or your son again. You need to divorce that man. Your unconditional love shines through. You and your family will survive. You will love again. You will thrive again. And with someone who loves and respects every member of your family for exactly who they are. It gets better. It gets so much better. Just keep planting more seeds and keep watering. You did right by your kids. I was also gonna say, in the US, you can't legally kick your kid out of the house until they're 18. He can call CPS on your post ad. Semicolon. Yeah. What a homophobic asshole. You can't act like this and then claim to be Christian. Or a father. Jesus would have accepted your son the way he is. Be more like that. Not from the US, but we'll definitely look into that. Thank you. NTA. Where are you from? If you're from Australia, or I know of some good resources for your son and you. I've seen people on this sub before, and on ATA, who've chosen their homophobic, abusive partners over their LGBTQ kids. Every time. It's a case of the kid, rightfully, cutting their parents out and refusing to speak to them. And the clueless parent wishing they could reconnect, oblivious to just how much they emotionally destroyed their child by refusing to stick up to them against a horrible abuser and proving to them that no one, not even their parent, has their back. Those people were bad people. You are not. You did the right thing. You defended your baby. You showed him that. Yes. Even though it may feel like the world is against him, his mother still has his back and will still look after him no matter what, even if he feels traumatized and depressed over the situation. So long as you keep supporting him and keep showing him the love he deserves, you can help him heal from this. Make it clear to him that none of this is his fault. This is entirely his abusive father's fault. Don't go to couples therapy. Couples therapy is for struggling couples who need to compromise and meet in the middle. Your situation with your husband is absolutely not a meet in the middle situation. He is entirely in the wrong. He is the only one who needs to change. I thought the same thing. I think the husband should get some therapy to deal with his own intolerant ass. And after recognizing and working on his own faults and prejudices, maybe be allowed to speak to any of the kids again. If he can treat one of them in this way, he can treat all of them like that, and he doesn't deserve a relationship with them. I'm so happy Op was quick to put her foot down. No excuses. No second chance. No. Siding with your husband would make you a bad person. Keep supporting your son. You had no idea your husband loved his children so conditionally. It's like finding out a truth about so you may have walked away from on day one if you'd known. Don't let him badmouth you or your son to the other kids. Either reinforce to them that gay is okay, but homophobic is not. Even if it's hiding behind Jesus, who never said a word about it. You now know your husband is a violent homophobe. You witnessed your husband commit 2 felonies, an aggravated assault, which is also a hate crime due to the reason he did it. He perpetrated these violent crimes upon your son. I don't care if you are Catholic. Divorce is compulsory in this situation. My parents tried to kick me out of the house at 16 because I'm bi and was dating a trans person. I ended up being grounded for a year because of it. You have no idea how relieved your son is that you accept him, especially since you grew up and might still be religious. My parents are very traditional Roman Catholic, so it's been a strain in our relationship ever since. You did the right thing. I would have loved to have a parent like you. IDK how someone can pour love into their child for 16 years and then revoke it in an instant over who they've always been inside. I love my husband and my son. I want them both to be happy, but my son is 16. He can't live without his parents' help. My husband can. Even if your son was an adult, your husband is still in the wrong. You don't wait until the kids are grown and then take your husband back. Your husband's views are disgusting. Him being cut out of your and the children's lives is his doing, not yours. I hope someday I can be the type mother you've been to your son. I was in tears reading how you supported him, and I'm sorry it seems to be coming at the cost of your marriage, but if your husband can't see how lucky he is to have a woman like you as a mother to his children, maybe you ought to find someone who appreciates clearly the incredible person you are. That was a make or break moment for your son, and your support for him probably saved his life. Kick out your husband or leave. You did the right thing defending your son and standing up to violence. He harmed your child and is trying to poison his siblings against him. Maybe he was okay with other people being gay because it had nothing to do with him, but I guess he showed his true colors when his own child is gay. You have two choices. Either you protect your children or stay with a man who will only turn your home into a toxic environment for your family. Take all your kids and stay with your family members, ones who are not homophobic, until everything is sorted out. Also, report/press charges on that man who verbally and physically assaulted a minor for being gay. Add hate crime and or DV to the charges. Edit. How do your other kids feel about this whole thing? Are they believing their father's BS? Rejecting your own children is beyond heartless. And divorcing your own partner because she refuses to reject her own child? That's so callous and repulsive. I'm sorry you have to go through this, but you need to see it as it is. Your husband is actually a terrible person and only revealed it because of this turn of events. You would bear no responsibility, nor should you blame yourself if this ends up in divorce. In fact, there is no reason to stay married to a terrible person. Think about it this way, your son didn't do anything wrong by being gay or coming out. So how could you be wrong for protecting him? So, what do you want? If he could be convinced that his son being gay is fine and apologize, would you want to stay together? Asking for couples therapy might be your best bet then. Either you have a chance of convincing him, or you will know for certain that he won't change. That said, since he refuses to talk to you, this may not be an option at all. Do you think you can't look at him the same way again and want a divorce? Well, divorcing to protect your children is the best reason you could have. No shame. And there's even the possibility of going for a trial separation first. In any case, you're doing the right thing by not letting him back in, as long as he mistreats your son. It must be very hard to have your husband suddenly change like that, but I'm sure your support means the world to your son. You are protecting your child from someone who thought violence was an okay response. You absolutely did the right thing. Is your son alright? He must be incredibly hurt because of his father's response. If anything, you are too lenient to your husband. He became an unapologetic monster. It's restraining order time. You are not a bad person for protecting your son from abuse. Queer kids are at higher risk for a variety of dangers: homelessness, addiction, suicide. You know what reduces that risk? A supportive family. You protected your baby from a grown-ass adult who assaulted him. Although I'm sorry that this has disrupted your family, you should be proud. Your son will remember you standing up for him for his whole life. What an awful situation. However, I believe you need to be here for your son right now. He's only 16, and he needs you. As for therapy, how about a therapist for your son? How he processes this huge rejection due to his sexuality could affect him for the rest of his life. He needs to understand this is not his fault. Personally, I think your husband has been beyond cruel and violence towards your 16-year-old son by a grown man is unforgivable. I chose my son over my husband. Does that make me a bad person? Probably. Hell no you're not. Exclamation mark. I swear I read the story and was able to breathe only when you ejected your childish husband and chose to protect your son. I don't think I could ever look at him the same way. He hit our son. That's not okay. I would never forgive that. I'll always love my son, no matter what he chooses to do with his life. Why can't my husband just accept him for who he is? Some people aren't good parents. If he's okay with these strangers being openly gay, why can't his son? He is an hypocrite. Now my son blames himself for me being upset with his father. He needs to go to therapy. I keep telling him it's not his fault, but it doesn't help that whenever their father does come home, he poisons our other children's minds to think it is their older brother's fault. That's not okay. Divorce and keep him away from the children if he's not able to act like a decent human being. This is not good for the children. I just want my family to be peaceful again. I am sorry but that's not possible. Your irate husband showed you how he is. Do you really want him back? But my husband is refusing to talk to me for as long as I defend my son. He is not even remorseful. Last week, he suggested a divorce. Seems like the best option. I love my husband so much. Do you or do you love who you thought he was before all this? Seems like you never thought he could be some open to reject and hit his son. But if he doesn't accept my son and apologize for hurting him, I don't think I could stay married to him. Every time I see him, I'm just reminded of that moment when his fist hit my son's face. And it makes me so angry and upset. No shit. I am pissed and it's my family. My mother has suggested we go to couples therapy. But I see no point if his father is too stubborn to accept his son for who he is. There's no point but therapy for your son to accept it's not his fault his father is a jackass, and maybe family therapy for the older children and you could be good. Is it even worth it to stay married if all I remember is him harming my son? Nope. Sounds like your homophobic ex-husband chose a misreading of scripture instead of his family, and instead of following Jesus' example of love. Good riddance. If he hit him once, he'll do it again. Get out. Get custody. His mask slipped, and now you know he isn't above violence. You are 100% right to defend your son. Your husband should love him for who he is. This is the way your son was born, and he should accept and love him unconditionally. He shouldn't force his homophobic ways on you or your son. You are an awesome mom and your son is lucky to have you. Please tell your son he is perfect the way he is. I'm very worried that you get the kids in the family therapy and you sit them down and tell them that their father poisoning their minds against their brother is wrong. I'm not sure if they saw the father drag him out of the house, but explain that your father was hurting your brother and tried to throw him out of the house. I know it's difficult, daddy isn't here right now, but think about whether I would ever stand aside and let anyone hurt any of you. You need to be there for your brother and not let anyone put blame where it doesn't belong. Your brother being gay did not ruin my marriage, and I hope your father can see the throwing his own son out of his house for being gay is terribly wrong. You need to let them think about what if they made a decision he didn't like. Should you let him throw them out also? You are their parents and this is their home. They need to see that they can love their father without agreeing with his harsh and intolerant viewpoint and his inappropriate attempts to poison their relationship with their brother. This is really important because they should look at your son and see how much pain has in and how he would take it back and hide his whole identity if he had any idea this would happen. I hope you can get family support for this so that other people who your husband might listen to would tell him that regardless of whatever bias he possesses, that throwing him out at 16 years old is plain wrong. One thing that stays with me is my mother telling my father, "You don't have to be my husband, but she will always be my daughter." I think you did the right thing. You aren't a terrible person for choosing your son over your husband. Any good mother would have done that. If you do proceed with the divorce, make sure to bring up his violence toward your son. It could help out in the long run. And make sure to have a sit down with your other kids too. They should know their brother isn't at fault. You're a great mother for being there and helping your son through all of this. Please don't think otherwise. Get the divorce. Your husband is a bigot. Get the best damn divorce lawyer you can find. And do all you can to keep him from anything other than supervised visitation. Also make sure that he has to at least help fund college for all your kids. Also, if your son still has any bruises, or your husband ever touches him again, call the police. You can't make your husband stop being a bigot, but you can give him consequences for being a violent bigot. Ma'am, I'm gay. Your son is a teen. Your husband is a grown man, and should have been charged with assault. Quite frankly, listen to your heart, and I think you are. Set your son up for success. I think that ship has sailed. Get the divorce. I'm a gay man and wanted to say you're an amazing mother. I'm sorry, but the moment your husband's fist hit your son's face, your marriage was over. I'd take him for everything has worth and then some. What he did crossed a line that can never be undone. Your son will probably never feel safe around your husband again. I will also say that as a gay man, your son's and husband's relationship has forever been changed. I will also state that my brother and I haven't spoken to my father in 10 years and don't plan to in the near future. My father was a shitty father from the beginning, and it wasn't because of me being gay, although I think it's a piece of it, but has lost out on important moments of both his sons' lives. He has never and will never meet my husband. He also has never met his daughter-in-law, brother's wife, or his 2 granddaughters, one of which is 20 months old. Continue to stand by your son. has the one that needs you and has already lost one parent. Don't make him lose another. Woman, you're not a bad person for choosing your son over your husband. You are a heck of a strong woman and the best kind of mom there is. You protected your child, which many moms won't do. You absolutely did the right thing. Ditch the bigot. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.